Okay, I think we're live.
Okay.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our first community conversations on race of 2022. I can't believe it's 2022. It still feels, I don't know, it feels like it's been like 5 years since 2020, but my name is Katie Watts-Whitaker. I am the marketing and communications manager for CAP Sonoma. And, you know, it's exciting. I think this is like our 56th community conversations on race, which is something that I started with our team at CAP Sonoma, and I'm just really glad that we've continued. And I wanted to start by thanking everyone that's ever been on as a panelist, a moderator. It's important to continue to have these conversations, and I just am grateful for everyone that's ever been involved. I want to introduce our guest today. I am so excited to have Judy Grant here with me today. Judy is a licensed marriage and family therapist. She is also the Director of Equity and Inclusion for Penny Lane Centers in Los Angeles. Hi, Judy.
Hi, Katie. It's so nice to be here. Thank you so much for having me to talk about such an important topic. I really appreciate the invitation and the support from CAP Sonoma and from Penny Lane Centers to do this tonight.
Absolutely. We feel the same. I'm really grateful for you being here tonight. We're going to talk about how to raise anti-racist children. So this is a topic that I know myself as a mom. I think about this every day, and it's not an easy thing to talk about, but it's an important one. So I'm happy that we're starting the year off like this. I wanted to take just a moment. This is the first community conversations on race that we've had on Facebook Live since someone very important to our agency is no longer with us. I just wanted to take a moment to say that Vince Harper was instrumental in starting these conversations, and he is very, very missed. And I just wanted to dedicate tonight to Vince. Okay, so let's get into this.
Okay.
All right, Judy, will you start by just telling us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Okay, so as Katie mentioned, my name is Judy Grant, and I am the Director of Equity and Inclusion at Penny Lane Centers. But I'm also a mom. I'm also a wife. I'm a sister. I'm a daughter. And I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I came to this profession later on in my life. Went back to school in 2013, graduated in 2015, and have been working in the field ever since. And I didn't really know what my calling was. I was just working in jobs and providing for my family best as I could, until one day my husband said, "Have you ever thought about being a therapist?" And everything really seemed to click and make sense for me. And since that moment, I've been not doing a job, Katie, because I'm doing something that I love, something that I'm passionate about. So it never feels like work. It always feels like an opportunity to make a difference in someone else's life. My parents definitely instilled that in me and my siblings, to be of service to others. And so that's why I'm here. This position as the Director of Equity and Inclusion came about as a result of our Racial Justice Committee that our amazing CEO, Wendy Carpenter, put together after the death of George Floyd. She was enraged, as most of us were, and decided that we needed to take action. And she said, "Let's do something here at Penny Lane." And we put a Racial Justice Committee together. And from that, policies have changed, things have been implemented, strategies, perspectives changed. And we've really not just talked the talk, but we're walking the walk. And so in this position, I have the great opportunity to enhance awareness around these topics, which is what we're going to be doing here tonight.
Yes, thank you so much. That's, you said not just walk the walk, but, talk the talk. It's important, action, it takes action. These are, you said that that this all started for you guys, and I think it was May of 2020. And we saw, a lot of that then. And it's cool to see when it's continued, almost 2 years later, because this kind of work, it's really never finished. Like there's no expiration date on this. There's no end date. So thank you for all the work that you're doing.
Of course. And you're right. This is not a one and done conversation. This conversation has to go on because like anything else, in order for something to be a habit, it has to be drilled into us.
Right.
So we have the first conversation and we follow up until it's just automatic, until we eradicate prejudice and bias and racism from our society, because it really has no place here.
Yeah. So let's get into a little bit about how to do that.
Okay.
It's learned, right? This is not something that we're born feeling, that we're born thinking. So let's talk about that and why we're here. What's the difference between non-racist and anti-racist?
Okay, let me back up for a quick second, Katie.
Okay, back up.
So we understand that this is a difficult topic to discuss. People don't like talking about race and racism. We don't like talking about money, religion, politics, right? But we need to learn how to be comfortable in the discomfort, because from that discomfort will come understanding and will come change. I'm going to read a quick quote to you. This book that I love, Uncomfortable Conversations with a Black Boy by Emmanuel Acho. And he writes, "Getting uncomfortable is the whole idea. Everything great is birthed through discomfort. Most of our major accomplishments are accompanied by some form of discomfort. And when you think back to the civil rights era, were they comfortable? No, but did they know that they had to take action? Absolutely. So we're going to sit today, Katie, in a bit of discomfort in order to get more comfortable with this topic. Okay, so non-racist, anti-racist, what are those? A non-racist is someone who believes truly that they do not believe in racism. They do not discriminate. The way they think, the way they believe, anti-racism. And that's a wonderful thing, right? But that's a thought, that's a belief. To be anti-racist, we now need to associate some sort of action with it. Okay, so now we have the thought, we have the belief that we are against anything that could be considered to be racist, but now we're standing up, now we're taking action. So the anti-racist piece is the person that is willing to speak up and to take a stand and to do something to make a change. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, it makes total sense. I want to say before, because I forgot to mention this, for those of you here with us and listening, please feel free to put in the chat any questions that you might have for Judy. And in our last 15 minutes of the conversation, we'll try to address any that we can. But pick her brain because she knows what she's talking about. So yeah, but it makes total sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's not enough just to be non-racist.
No, we need to speak up. And we'll get more into that. And we're actually going to talk about ways that we can do this. Okay. Before we really jump in, Katie, I just want to ask you a few questions, and maybe for the folks listening to us, they can answer in their heads as well. So, who taught you to brush your teeth?
My parents.
Wash your hands?
They probably did. Yeah, they did.
What about please and thank you?
Your parents.
Okay, because our parents are our first teachers.
Right.
They are our role models. And what we see as kids, what we emulate, is what we see our parents doing. So most of us can answer, that yes, my parents taught me to say please and thank you and to wash my hands. And those things have always stayed with you, right, Katie? Have you ever forgotten how to wash your hands and brush your teeth?
I'm sure there are days, but for the most part, I remember.
Because those things have been instilled in you. Day after day after day, you were taught this is what you do, this is how you do it. right? So think about being anti-racist. If we start teaching our kids from a young age, day after day, this is what you do to be anti-racist, those things are going to get drilled into their minds. Those things are going to become just a part of who they are to grow up to be anti-racist adults. But we first have to start by teaching our kids.
Right. Something interesting came in. Someone made the comment, when discussing race, it is important to emphasize that race is a social construct. Race was developed to stratify a caste system. So it's true. Race is a construct.
Absolutely. And, I'm reading a lot of different books about this subject, and they talk about how the words black and white weren't really labels until people made them labels, until people wanted to have a divide to create an upper and a lower class, wanted to separate people. And I believe it's in this book by Emmanuel Ocho, who talks about that and how it was all constructed so a hierarchy could be created.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to just go into just children and their natural ability to learn. Okay, so children learn quickly. We see it as parents. I saw it with my children. I see it with other children. They're really able to absorb a lot of information at an early age and take that with them as all of those neurons are firing and their tiny brains are working in overdrive. They're absorbing a lot. I remember when my eldest daughter was in daycare. It was a Russian daycare, and she would come home speaking Russian. And I didn't understand a word of what she was saying, but I was proud of the fact that my little girl was speaking Russian, as was her daycare worker. And at some point we had to switch, and she moved to preschool. And the Russian that she was learning was no longer being ingrained in her every day. She wasn't hearing it every day. It wasn't part of her world anymore. And guess what? She lost the skill, right? So if it's not consistently discussed and spoken, we will lose it. We will forget it. So as a parent, it's our duty to have these conversations on an ongoing basis. This is not a one and done conversation. The parent needs to take the opportunities when given and created to continue the conversation with them so the information sticks with them throughout the course of their lifetime.
Okay. So we have everyday work cut out for us.
Absolutely. But it's not hard. It doesn't have to be hard, Katie. It can be as simple as, let's try that new Japanese restaurant down the street. Let's expose our kids to something new and different and celebrate those differences. But we'll get more into that.
Okay. So, I mean, you kind of answered this, but so we talked about the difference between being non-racist and anti-racist. So why is it important to teach our children to be anti-racist?
Because we want our children to be able to embrace, accept, and include others. And by being anti-racist, a child will then be able to be more empowered to do so, don't you think? Mm-hmm. Where they can embrace the new child coming into the classroom, who might come from a different place, who might be curious about what a quinceañera is and wants to go and attend so they can learn something new. So we need to be able to teach our children to stand up and use their voices when it comes to these sorts of issues. They're a lot more powerful than we give them credit for, and their little voices can be very, very strong, and they need to learn how to use them and to recognize when something is wrong and to be able to say it.
Right. So I'm sure there are many parents watching. I have a 12, almost 13-year-old, and I have a 5, almost 6-year-old. What age do we start talking about this stuff? When do we start? Is my 5-year-old too young?
Nope. No, not at all. So children are able to like distinguish the differences in regards to ethnicity between 2 and 3 years old. We can start having the conversation, but of course we're using age appropriate language. When they're really little like that, Katie, we're going to be modeling behavior. So they may not be able to articulate what they see mom and dad doing, but they're going to be able to see what we're doing. If mom and dad are laughing at an inappropriate joke, that child is going to absorb that and recognize like, oh, well, mom and dad is doing it, so it must be okay. But if they see mom and dad saying, no, that's inappropriate, I don't appreciate that, then your child is going to learn like, oh, okay, this is what it is to be anti-racist. This is what it is to stand up and tell people that this is not okay.
Right. So are we talking 2, 3?
Okay, so
no, I'm sure parents, I know that all children are different. And like you were saying before, it's not like you have to sit and have a serious, okay, we're going to sit down and we're going to have this serious discussion about racism, 1.5-year-old. So it's not that you have to do that. It's little things.
Right. So again, with the little ones, we want to model the behavior. When your child is 4 or 5 years old, we all hear our kids saying, that's not fair, right? We all hear them saying that. So we now need to talk to them about fairness. We're not going to use the words racism. We're not going to be saying, let's sit down and talk about critical race theory. We're going to say to them, let's talk about what it is to be fair and unfair and how that makes you feel. And then we can actually pose examples. For instance, it is Black History Month. We are stopping to acknowledge the amazing contributions by many of our African-American citizens. But you can use some of those historical people and places and events to talk to your kids. For instance, Rosa Parks. So your 5-year-old, Rosa Parks, she was sitting in the front of the bus and they wanted her to get up and sit in the back of the bus because of her skin color, because that she was brown, she was Black, and they didn't think that she could sit up front. Do you think that was fair? How do you feel about that? How would you feel if somebody said you had to sit in the back of the bus when you wanted to sit up front? So do you see how that conversation could very easily be understood by a 5-year-old? Because they know the difference between fair and unfair.
Right.
By the age of 9, our children really have their racial attitudes in place. So
what do you mean racial attitudes?
How they perceive race, how they perceive differences. Do they celebrate? Do they dismiss? Do they ignore? So I think when you're talking to an older child, you can be more forthcoming. You can use those words to talk to them because they better understand, things that are going on. They hear about it in the news. They hear mom and dad talking about it. So these are all opportunities for conversation. So when a 10-year-old is hearing the news about George Floyd, for instance, that's really scary. You sit down with your child, that was really scary what happened. I can't believe that happened to that gentleman. Like, what are your thoughts on that? And of course, age appropriate language, and we're not showing them this video. Honestly, I have never watched it. I just couldn't. But we're talking to them about these things at that age because they're more able to understand what's actually happening in society. So imagine if your racial attitudes are set at 9. but you were taught hate your whole life. When you're 47 years old, you're still inclined to think hate. But if by 9, your parents taught you inclusivity and acceptance, at 47, you're still going to be that accepting and inclusive person.
Right. So at 9.
Yeah, so we got our work cut out for us before our kids reach 9 years old, but it's doable. And I want to make it very clear to parents that, like I said before, it doesn't have to be a big thing. It can be, let's listen to some music from Colombia tomorrow night and have a dance party. Why are we going to do that, Mom? Well, I want to share with you the different types of music from around the world and all of these wonderful musicians and the sounds that they create and the different instruments. Let's make a plan that we listen to different music. And that is showing your child that you are excited about it, that you want to learn about these different places, and that it's something to celebrate.
Right. A comment came in. I want to read it. And,
okay.
To Katie's question about when to talk to kids about racism, consider that virtually no white parents have to talk to their kids about how to behave in social situations, and that Black parents have to have the talk with their children to be socially acceptable. I mean, that's
so
absolutely true.
It's absolutely true. Mm-hmm.
And I have two sons, and my 12-year-old, my husband and I adopted him in Los Angeles, and he's half Mexican and looks Mexican. And then my 5-year-old, he's as white as I am. So the conversations, we've had many conversations in my house, but I'm aware as a parent of kids that look very different, that the conversations have to be different, unfortunately.
But you know what? It doesn't mean that they have to be excluded from the other conversation.
Right.
Because you want to make them aware of what's going on with my brother. Well, so you want to, in that situation, I would think that you would want to engage both of them in the conversation, though it might be a little bit different for each.
I think what I meant by that is that I know that my children, when they walk out the door, they're going to have very different experiences just because of the way that they look.
So Katie, I have a 15-year-old son and he's growing like a weed. It's ridiculous. He's now 6 foot, and with his afro, he's like 6'4". So the other day he mentioned, they're at school, they have masks on, and he mentioned that some people think that he's intimidating because they can't see him smiling behind his mask. And I took this information in, and the following day I had to follow up and say, you know what you said to me about being intimidating? You need to be so careful because you are this wonderful young Black boy, but someone can see you as the 6 foot tall, intimidating Black man. And they're not going to stop to think about the fact that, you love playing with your dog, and you go on these great bike rides, and you love hanging out with your cousins. They don't know anything about you in that regard. They'll just see this intimidating young Black man. And because of that, they will judge you. And I said, there are going to be times where you're going to be in a situation where you're going to have to make yourself smaller so you're not so imposing over people. You're going to have to be extra friendly, extra polite, extra kind to the woman in the elevator as she holds her child closer to her because you're in the elevator with them. And this isn't the first conversation I've had about this with him. But now that he's 6 foot, I had to have that sort of conversation because he is this big kid. And we need to be having these conversations with our kids. And I don't care if you're Black, white, whatever it is, we need to have these conversations. And maybe as a white parent, you talk about that conversation that the Black mother has to have with her child, so they get to understand what it might be like for that Black child.
Right. If a Black child is old enough to experience racism, then a white child is old enough to learn about it.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So let's talk about some resources.
Okay.
There's a lot out there. Give us some of your recommendations. Let's talk about it.
Okay. So there are a lot of wonderful resources. I'm going to start with Disney.
Okay.
As Disney has really, in my opinion, allowed little girls like myself to begin to see themselves represented on screen. When Princess and the Frog came out and I saw Tiana and my girls could see themselves in Tiana, that was a very empowering moment. Disney has produced Pocahontas. They've produced Jasmine, Maddie Belle from Encanto, and the list goes on. And I love the fact that they are sharing these different princesses, but not only that, they are focusing on other cultural traditions in Encanto or in Soul, where this Black man, love of jazz, and they're sharing that experience with their young audiences. So I like the fact that Disney is exploring these areas and to make them fun for kids to watch, right? So there's that. Then you have things like PBS and Sesame Street that always are preaching inclusion. Everyone on Sesame Street looks different. Everyone on Sesame Street is loved and accepted, right? So we love shows like that. And then there are resources in your neighborhood. You could go to a museum. You could choose to go to, it was Chinese New Year last week. You could choose to go to a Chinese New Year event with your child. You could choose to take your child to your friend's family's bat mitzvah or Passover dinner and expose them. So there are definitely resources that you can pick up, but then there are also just things in your neighborhood, in your community that you could do as well. There are a whole host of books. I love the children's books on diversity issues. I'm going to share a few. Is that okay?
Oh yeah, go for it. Whenever you share, I'll make sure that when we're done, I'll put the links to them in the chat here so that people can look into getting them.
So there's this book, My Voice is a Trumpet. And I'm just going to read you a snippet from this. It says, I will learn to speak up, to show I am strong, to stand for what's right, and to know what feels wrong. This book is all about empowering a child's voice. So when you let a child know that their voice is worthy and deserves to be heard, that child will then be able to better stand up for others that they feel are being treated in an unfair manner. Just like you would want your child to stand up if somebody was being bullied, we want your child to be able to stand up against prejudice.
Right.
Race Cars.
Race Cars.
By Jenny Devaney. This is a children's book on white privilege. And you're kind of thinking, how am I going to talk about white privilege with my child? Well, this book actually has a lot of notes for parents and educators in it. So it kind of walks you through how to address these issues with your child. But just briefly, Chase is a black car. Ace is a white car. Ace's race is straightforward. Chase's race is under and over and around and through. Ace wonders, why is it taking Chase so long to run this race? I don't understand it. Where is he? He comes to realize that his friend has more obstacles to go through in his life than he does. When he got to the magical forest, he saw Ace speeding towards him. I'm so sorry it took me so long to realize how much harder it was for you to win this race, Chase, said Ace. The best friends embraced. So we can talk to our children about these topics. And here's, one of those resources to help you do so. Any questions before I move on, Katie? I feel like
there's so much to talk about, and I love to listen to you. There's a comment that Jason Reynolds is a wonderful young adult author that someone loves for her Black sons. Okay. There's a question, any books that are good resources for toddlers, like picture books?
Oh. Well, yes, there is. Okay, I'm building my children's library. Amazon and I are the best of friends because I'm constantly buying books. But here is one of my newest books for the younger child. This is Antiracist Baby. And this is by Ibram Kendi, who is also the author of Stamped and Stamped from the Beginning, which are exceptional books for maybe the adolescent and then the adult to read. But Mr. Kendi wanted a book that he could share with his young child. And so he created this. He says, anti-racist baby is bred, not born. Anti-racist baby is raised to make society transform. That's what we're talking about. How do we raise these children so they are much more aware and proactive about what's going on around them, rather than sitting back and thinking somebody else is going to take care of it? No, the anti-racist baby will raise their voice in order to transform society.
Very cool.
I have more if you want.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Hold on. I have them written down here. Okay, just a few others that I'll cite. I don't have them physically with me right now. Eyes That Kiss in the Corners. Wonderful book by Joanna Ho, and it's a story about celebrating the shape of Asian eyes. Fry Bread by Kevin Mallard is a Native American story about fry bread, and it actually has a recipe in the back that you can then make with your kids. The Proudest Blue by I. Muhammad is a story of a young girl coming into her own as she wears her hijab for the first time at school. So imagine if your child's library was filled with these different type of books. They're going to recognize and feel that all are welcome in our home, all are welcome around us, because these books are so different and look at different people from different religions, ethnicities, cultures, what have you. Another thought in regards to exposing our kids is, who do we have in our home? Who are our kids' teachers? Who is the pediatrician? Who's the hairstylist? Do they all look the same? Or are you going to a professional of a different ethnicity because they're the best at what they do? And showing your kids that you yourself are willing to reach out to someone that might be different from you, but still has the skill set that you need.
Right. Right.
Can I share a quick story about my sister?
Of course you can.
My sister, Dr. Sophia Grant, is a pediatrician. There have been a few occurrences in which her patients thought that she was Doc McStuffins. And for those of you who might not know, Doc McStuffins is a Disney character. She's a young Black girl who is the doctor to her stuffed animals. And I'm thinking when those kids see my sister, they are immediately comforted in the belief that she's Dr. McStuffins and know that she's going to take care of them the way they need to be taken care of.
Representation is so important.
Absolutely.
Okay. We have, let me see, something came in. There's some people are putting some great references in the chat. Not My Idea by Anastasia Higginbotham. I've never heard of that one.
Oh, I know Higginbotham. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's a little rabbit.
Aw. Back of the Bus by Aaron Reynolds about Rosa Parks from the perspective of young African-American child riding on that bus. Okay, we have a question that came in. In the current climate of restricting education literature about racism, what do you recommend for reaching out to those who don't want to hear about anti-racism? That is a great question. That's a tough question. That's like a whole other, I don't know, 20-hour conversation. But I was thinking along the same lines when you and I were talking about this conversation tonight, and how do you deal with that when we're trying to raise anti-racist children and then schools are banning books like How to Kill a Mockingbird and
I'm at a loss for that sort of thing. So I'm actually in the process at work of a very intensive diversity training with everybody in the agency. And we have over 500 people. And one of the things, as we're preparing for this, we talked about there will be resistance. There will be people who don't understand why they're doing this at work. There will be people who say, I don't want to talk about this at work. And we had to kind of think about how do we address that, right? So Katie, you are going to come across people who are resistant to talking about this, who don't want to talk about it. Because again, it's one of those taboo subjects. And what we have done is said, we understand where you're coming from, but what we want to do here is provide information to perhaps enhance someone's understanding. I'm not trying to indoctrinate you. I'm not telling you it has to be my way. I simply want to provide you with the information with maybe some historical context for you to understand where we are today. And hopefully, by providing that information, you will be in a better place to perhaps form different opinions, different feelings. But then again, maybe not, because maybe that person has been taught hate their entire lives, and to switch it is so contradictory to everything that they are. They don't know how to go about that.
I'm just going to take a second to digest all of that.
Yeah.
It's a lot. And it's true. You will be met with resistance when doing this kind of work, talking about this. And, I've been met with a lot of resistance in, the last almost 2 years of putting these conversations together. And it's a part of it. And you just have to push through it.
Yeah. And, it's hard, but we can't change someone's mind, right? We know that we can't change people. We can just do everything we can to provide them with the information and the resources, right? And they have to do with it what they will. But if you are there and you hold steadfast in your convictions, and you offer to share the information, I think that will speak volumes for who you are in your anti-racist behavior. But also, I'm thinking a huge component of that resistance is our curiosity, okay? And by curiosity, we don't want to just say, oh, that's ridiculous, I can't believe you think like that, right? Because that's dismissing the whole person.
Right.
So, and then that's immediately going to, put them off to any conversation. But what if we said, can you tell me a little bit more about why you think like that? Or when do you think you first started having those thoughts? Was it something that happened to you maybe? So by staying curious, we're going to get more information from them, right? They're going to be more willing to open up. And maybe this is the therapist in me, and I always have to be curious. But honestly, if somebody is asking you questions that make you, I've never thought about it. Oh, okay. And maybe you can get them to stop and think, Katie.
Yeah. It's interesting that you say that. I this past almost a year now, I've been in a cohort with National CAP where I've been trained in leading racial healing circles. And we have these basically like rules that you enter into the circle. And one of the one that has always stuck out to me is turn to wonder. So instead of judgment, it's turned to wonder. I wonder why you think that way. I wonder why you're feeling that, because, there's a lot that we can learn from one another. And I think that it's hard to like do this work and to make any dent in this if you can't like take a step back and even like wonder why somebody thinks differently than you do.
Right. And that's right along the lines of staying curious.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. And I know another really big part of this, I know for me and for people that I engage with, is the power of storytelling. Understanding the lived experience of someone else and the impact that can have on you, right? So if you sit with someone and you find out about their lived experience and the challenges that they have had, based upon ethnicity, what have you, ability, orientation, you might begin to find that you're going to be a bit more empathetic about that. And you might catch yourself from going to judgment the next time you see someone.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you another question. And we've been talking about this a little bit, but what can we do today? I mean, it's 6:15, so I don't know, we could still do stuff today. There's still more of the day today, but just what can we do today to make a difference with our kids?
Okay, so today, let's turn on some new music. Let's watch a different program. Let's make a plan to go to a different museum. Let's go shopping in a different supermarket. Let's explore maybe a different zip code that we hadn't been to before, but they have some really great restaurants there. So those are things that you can do right now. We can all plan for this as the days go on and you plan for your weekend. You can think, what can I do to expand my world and my child's world and to be more inclusive and diverse this coming weekend? We can make a plan to do that. Encourage diverse relationships with your kids. So who do you play with at school? Do you play with the new kid from Israel? Do you play with the girl that just arrived from El Salvador? Encourage those relationships. Let's plan a play date with those kids. So your child sees you taking action to allow them to have a more diverse social group. Attend cultural events like I had mentioned before. The Greek Orthodox Church down the street from me is always having events. Go, take your child, expose them to these things. Like I said, history museums where you can find different artifacts, I think are a great way. And of course, these children's museums tend to be hands-on, so are more interactive and fun for your kids. So talk about those things that you're seeing, that they're picking up, where they came from. So again, we don't have to say, we're going to sit down at dinner and have a conversation about race. No, you don't have to do that. But you can do these other things instead that is going to be talking about race without having to say it. But the behavior by the parents being modeled to the child is that this is inclusivity. Yeah.
The other night we watched Encanto many times. It's such a great movie, so I'm not complaining. I love it. But we've had many family conversations about that film and what it means and the culture and the stuff about like generational trauma.
Absolutely.
So you can watch a movie and then have a conversation about it.
Yeah. What did you like from their culture? What do you think it told you? Again, stay curious, wonder. Ask your child. I'm going to share this. What if your child comes home and says, Mom, there's a new kid at school. I don't want to play with him because he's brown. Okay? Because
that could happen.
That could absolutely happen.
Yeah.
So how do you deal with that? Well, tell me what's wrong with brown. And you see that we all have different skin colors. I like your skin color. I like brown. So we want, again, with our kids, when they say stuff like that, because they will, is to be curious. And we can also say, you know what? What do you like about him? Oh my gosh, he's great at baseball. Oh, and he got an A on his spelling test. So he has a lot of really great qualities, right? So now we're looking at it from a strength-based perspective, right? We're looking for the positives in that child and encouraging, you should be looking at those qualities. The skin color, while we definitely acknowledge it and we accept it, there's so much more to that person.
I'm sure you've heard this, I've heard this, and many joining us have heard people that have said, oh, we don't see color. We don't see color. We love everyone. We don't see color. What do you say to that?
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and tell you that I don't know how many times people have said that to me, like, oh, you're just Judy. We don't see color. And I think when I was younger, I was like, all right, cool. But as I got older, I'm like, wait a second, you have to see my color. Like, how can you not see my color? So I don't want to be colorblind. I want to acknowledge the color and say, yes, that person's of a different color. But we accept it and we embrace it. And we talk about the many shades of colors. Crayola recently came out with their new crayon set. I think it's called The World of Color. I might be mistaken there. And they have every possible color you can think of for a child to properly draw themselves. I remember I was in 4th grade and I didn't have a color to paint for myself. And the color that I chose was the best that I could do. But I remember that, Katie. So we don't want to be colorblind.
Right.
Yeah. Because there's so many beautiful things related to someone's color. So for instance, I'm Jamaican, right? So if you just look at me for my color, you might not know that. But if you're interested in knowing me, oh, you find out that I'm Jamaican, blah, 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 blah. And you get to really learn about people when you embrace their color.
Curiosity.
Back to curiosity.
Yeah. I'm gonna look at some of the comments that have been coming in. Let's see. Children are not resistant. At our school, I am astounded by how much very young children seek fairness and justice. Children are curious. Children truly care. It's absolutely true.
Yeah.
Go to the library, bookshelves are packed with wonder. It's very true. Make sure your house reflects diverse art, images, magazines, books. Absolutely. Absolutely. Someone's asking if they can get more info on racial healing circles. Absolutely. I will have your email here. I'll email you. Community Conversations on Race is a great forum. How does CAP gain community involvement? Do you track numbers logging into the community conversations? Yes, we do. We do track numbers and as much as we can. A lot of, some of it we can track, some of it we can't. To get community involvement, I mean, very different ways. We look internally, within our organization. There are incredible people that have been a part of these conversations for the last, almost 2 years. And we've had hundreds of people involved and from actually all over the world. So there's a lot of different ways that we've had community involvement. I'll talk a little bit more about that before we end. But Judy, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So this topic, raising your kids to be anti-racist, you can make mistakes, right? Like, so, I try every day to live my life this way, but I make mistakes all the time. So what do you say to the parents? Sometimes I fear that people will be hesitant to talk about this stuff, to do this kind of work, because they're afraid of failure, saying the wrong thing, doing the wrong thing. So what do you say on that? Will you speak on that a little bit, and like failing in this,
Absolutely. Because that's one of the points that I wanted to make before we ended. Own it. When you make a mistake in regards to these issues that are not easy, you own it, and you come back and you talk to your child about, like, oh my gosh, sweetie, mommy misspoke, mommy didn't have the right information. I'm so sorry. I've now found the proper information. Let me share this with you. And just acknowledge it, because I think it's important for kids to see that their parents can fail and recover. Their parents, we're human, and we need to model that for our children too, that we can make mistakes, but we can repair the mistake if we come back and address it. I think it's important that we don't feel like we have to have all the answers. I think at the start of this, Katie, you said something about Judy's the expert. I'm not the expert. I am learning right alongside everybody every day. Okay, I don't know all of it. I'm trying to absorb as much as possible, but I'm not the expert. So I'll screw it up. But I will come back and do my best to make that repair. Not long ago, I was having a conversation with someone, a woman, and I didn't know any different. And I made the assumption that she was heterosexual. And I said something about, we're two heterosexual females. Later in the conversation, she said something about her wife. And I immediately thought, oh my gosh, what have I done? And I interrupted her and I said, I am so sorry. I made this comment, and she was very kind. Judy, don't worry about it. I didn't even hear you say it. But Katie, it was important to me that I go back and make that repair, because I would have hated for her to get off that call and think, I can't believe Judy, said that. So it's important for us to know that we will make mistakes, but we can repair them. So repair with your children. Just like a child will come and say, Mommy and Daddy, I'm sorry. They can make mistakes, so can we. So repair it. by owning it.
We're coming, close to the end of our talk today. What is your hope if in 5 years from now? You go back to May of 2020 and the murder of George Floyd, which was not the first or thousandth time that had happened. And you see this social justice movement, also not the first or thousandth time that has happened. And you see a lot of the work being done and then it trending down. What do you hope in the next 5 years for our kids? That's a big question, but like, what comes to your mind?
As a parent, I don't want to have to worry about my child. I don't want to have to worry about your child. That all of our boys, all of our girls can go out there and be treated fairly. We already have enough that we worry about them about. We don't want to be scared about them simply being a human in the community and being targeted for being that human. So that's one thing. I want to see more of these conversations, whether it's here in this format, at my agency, at other agencies, where this is really being talked about, and we are getting uncomfortable with it, because out of that discomfort will be action. So I actually am feeling really good about what we are doing in my agency and the difference that I know we're making. And my hope is that it will continue to trickle down. And we have plans for our community and our clients to bring them in these conversations. But then this information will start to trickle down. And so you go home and you have the conversation at the dinner table. This is what I learned today. And we start making these small changes and start taking action in an anti-racist manner because of this increased understanding and empathy towards one another.
Thank you. That was a fantastic answer for a big, huge question off the cuff. So thank you so much. Is there anything else you want to say, Judy, before we're done today? Anything?
Our children can handle this information. Share it with them, teach them, be there with them. Don't be afraid. There are resources out there that you can tap into for support and partnership, but our children can handle the conversation. They are not too young.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. I want to thank you so much, Judy, for being here tonight. This was a very important and impactful conversation, and I'm just really grateful for you and that you exist, for one thing, because you're rad. And thank you for being here. And thanks to Penny Lane Centers for the work that you're doing and for helping us to promote this event. These conversations at CAP Sonoma, we feel strongly that they are so important. They need to be continued. We're not going to stop talking. For this next year, we plan to do one of them a month, like this, in this way on Facebook. And then we have 2 a month on Thursdays from 12 to 12:30 on KSRO. So that's what we're going to do this year, and a variety of topics. Again, when my coworker, Marcus Clark and Marcus works really closely with me on these conversations, we talked about what do we need to talk about in 2022, like what is really like on everyone's minds and in their hearts. And we're going to do a lot of topics around mental health and self-care, because I don't know about you, but I haven't talked to anyone that throughout this pandemic has not been experiencing a lot of issues with their mental health. It's been a really hard year. So we are definitely going to, keep talking about race issues, but we're gonna, throw some other stuff in there this year as well. We also plan to, when we can be in person, we're gonna do some racial healing circles in person. And so, as far as CAP Sonoma goes, we're continuing this work. We're not going to stop, and we're grateful to our community and everyone that's participated and been a part of this conversation, and any in the future. So, and before we end today, I'm excited because in March, Judy is going to come back. I got her back for another one. We're going to, she's actually going to have a colleague of hers on as well. And we're going to get some people in the community. We're going to talk about mental health and how we've been doing during this pandemic and what we can do to get through it. It's been a really difficult, isolating, anxiety ridden time. So we're going to talk about it. But again, I'll put my email in the chat, and I have Judy's as well. Feel free to reach out to either one of us. And mine is kwatts@capsonoma.org. I'll put it in there, but feel free to contact me with any questions. And Judy, thank you.
Thank you, Katie. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm really honored to have had this opportunity. So thank you so much.
Thanks. And I'm honored to have been able to talk with you about it. All right, everybody, have a really good night and a great week. And we'll see you next month.
Okay. Bye-bye, everybody. Take care.